After I posted an advanced body language video last month, I got some requests to do a more basic snake body language video, stuff that you'll encounter more often with your snakes. Those requests came in because I asked if you wanted to see it, and you said yes. I mean, maybe not you specifically, but some people said yes. So if you're offended that other people spoke for you, then you'll have to take it up with them. And honestly, I don't even know who they are off the top of my head. Welcome to the Green Room. I'm Bob Bledsoe. This is Freya, a snake who's kind of a legend here in the Green Room for producing some really beautiful babies, and she has a large body to display body language with. This will be good information for new keepers, and for the experienced pros who watch my channel, you can tell me what I'm missing or what you don't like or what I'm doing wrong. Oh, me! I'll tell you what you're doing wrong. Well, you're not an experienced pro, so I'm your brother. I think I'm qualified to weigh in on this. Fine, what am I doing wrong? Well, this plant has a yellow leaf on it, and that leaf's gonna die, and that's on you, pal. So, got him. Good one, Kent. Okay, let's get started. Now, most of the things that I talk about are gonna be relevant to ball pythons because that's what most of the viewers keep. But a lot of what I talk about can be applied to other snakes as well. But on the other side of the coin, there are certain things that different snakes do that other snakes don't necessarily do. For example, Maya, my black-headed python, has very different body language than the ball pythons or the reticulated pythons. One thing she does, for example, is whenever I open her tub, she'll come out of her hide and look directly up at me. I have no idea what that necessarily means. I think she's just checking things out. But what it means to me is if she does that, she's not in food mode, and she's safe to just go in and pick up. Okay, let's start with one that's very specific to ball pythons, and that is all balled up. You may only see juveniles do this because it's pretty rare that an adult, at least an adult pet snake, would do this. If they're all balled up, they're protecting their head. And if you see, especially a juvenile, snap into a balled up position, you can bet that they think they're being attacked or they feel like they're about to be attacked. Now, a version of this for a lot of ball pythons and for other snakes is just kind of piling themselves up into a corner or back against a wall. It's almost like they're cowering. So this is a snake that's feeling a little bit stressed out. You can also get a smaller ball python. In fact, I'll do this in B-roll. You can get a smaller ball python to ball up just by sort of putting them in your hands, and they'll do that. I don't think that they think they're being attacked at that point because they just kind of slowly move into that position, you know. Sometimes their head's in the middle, sometimes it's not, but when they're really doing it because they think they're being attacked, the idea there is to protect their vital parts, their head, basically. Here's one that I talked about recently in a video. How do you know if your snake is going to strike? This is one that all the new keepers want to know because they don't know their snake yet. They're not sure if they're going to get bit. Watch my video on comparing different python bites, by the way. That will help ease your nerves if you're nervous about that. But the way you can tell if a snake is in a strike position, this doesn't mean they're necessarily going to strike, but if they're in a strike position, they're in an S shape and their head is trained on you and they look very tense, and that's kind of tough for a new keeper to discern, especially because snakes sit in an S position a lot. But this is a tense position where their neck is up, they're looking at you, they're very trained on you, or your hand, you know, you might be using a hand to sort of try to distract them or whatever. That's a snake that is potentially going to strike. Now, a lot of times snakes will get into that position but never strike. The inspector does it all the time. He's never once struck at me or even tried to strike at me, but he gets into that S position a lot when he's in breeding season and when he's being combative with me. The plumber just showed up and was making all kinds of plumbing noises outside, and I went out there and I was like, I cannot work with these distractions. I'm just kidding. I went outside and thanked him for fixing our plumbing. But the point is that Freya is now off on an adventure. She's just sort of behind the mirror in the corner there. And I grabbed one of her sons. This is a little boy that I believe I'm keeping, and I gave him a name. This is Bengali. I just call him Ben. And the reason is that he kind of looks like a tiger. He's Tiger Lily's younger brother, product of Freya and Ron. And he kind of looks like Tiger Lily a little bit, but he's named after one of the Thundercats. So, you know, this is Bengali. Old Ben, he's very sweet. Okay, let's get, where are we at? What are we doing here? So let's just keep going with this video, right? You guys, I'm not one to get distracted. You know that. You're so handsome. Okay, here we go. All curled up, no tongue flicking, no movement, nothing is happening. That's a sleeping snake. Generally, we're going to talk about one other scenario where that happens, but that's how you know when your sleep is snaking. That's how you know when your sleep is snaking. That's the sentence I meant to put together. And a lot of people want to know this. Like, how do I know when my snake is asleep? Because they don't have eyelids, right? They can't close their eyes. It's just that they're not moving around. They're not tongue flicking. The thing is, though, that snakes often sleep on high alert. So, you know, when you have a snake that curls up for a few days waiting for a meal on the side of a trail or something like that, they're going to sleep most of that time, but they're on high alert and they'll wake up at any moment. So snakes kind of sleep like that, I think. I don't know that any sleep studies have been done on snakes, but I think that's kind of the case, because if you look into your enclosure and see that your snake is sleeping and then you approach them, that tongue will start to flick. As soon as they see movement, they want to know what's going on, and that tongue is what tells them what's going on. More on that later. Let's talk about periscoping really quick. First of all, that's not stargazing. Stargazing is a term that's used for snakes that have disorders of their equilibrium or potentially neurological disorders. These are spider ball pythons, which have an equilibrium thing. Their skull is misshapen inside their head a little bit, and it causes them to do this crazy thing where they'll put their head up and then they'll kind of fall backwards or sideways or whatever, and they'll do this weird thing. Also, snakes with IBD will do that kind of stuff. So periscoping is not stargazing. If your pet cobra is periscoping, you're probably in danger. It's about to strike. But if a ball python is doing it, he's just being cute. Actually, they're probably just trying to get a better view. I'm not sure why they do it, but some ball pythons do it occasionally and some never do it. So you'll just have to see if yours ever does it. The thing that's important to note about periscoping, regardless of why they're doing it, is that if they feel comfortable enough to get up like this and look around, they don't feel like they're in danger. So that's a comfortable snake. So that was a lot of sort of body position stuff. Now we're going to get into behavior stuff. But first, let's see what Kent came up with for Kent's Corner this week.
Hi, I'm Kent of the Corner. And oh, you know what? That's what we should have called this segment. Kent of the Corner. It sounds so epic. It's like Lord of the Rings. I am Kent of the Corner. And where these two walls come together, bonded by stucco and windows, but mostly stucco, they form what is known as a corner. And I am Kent, who resides here. And anyone who tries to kick me out of my corner shall be,
Okay, I think that's about all the time we have for Kent's Corner.
Dang it!
Did you even have anything that you wanted to...
Not really.
Okay, great, moving on. The Hoard of Keepers over on Patreon helped out with this video. You might be surprised to learn that I often upload videos and then realize that I forgot to mention something. Or maybe you wouldn't be surprised to learn that because people always tell me in the comments when I forget to mention something. But this time I was smart. I went over to Patreon and I was like, you guys, do not let me miss anything. What are some of the common behaviors that you had to learn when you first started keeping snakes? And they gave me a bunch. Some of which were really important and I would have missed otherwise. So thanks to these guys for not only supporting the channel, but coming through for me and helping when needed. If you want to help out with some Green Room Pythons videos in the future, just go to patreon.com/greenroompythons and check out all the perks and benefits of being a member of the Hoard of Keepers. And here are your discount codes for black box cages and for frozen rodents, Lane Labs. Thanks so much to these two channel sponsors. All right, here's some behavior stuff. First of all, a lot of these things are signs that your snake is stressed. And one of the signs, you know, like balling up, stuff like that. One of the signs, though, is heavy breathing. If your snake is normally just relaxed, you probably won't see much breathing at all because snakes don't have to respirate as much as we do, and they don't breathe as heavily. But if you see that little body going back and forth like that heavy breathing, that means that they're a little bit nervous. Now, you might see that without them balling up and without them protecting themselves. So it's not that they fear for their life. It's just they're on high alert. They're pretty nervous. What's going on? It's important to remember that snakes can handle a little bit of stress, and that's okay. It's important that they feel that stress and then move past it and realize that nothing bad happened to them. So when I talk about like heavy breathing and stuff like that, these are just things to look for so that you can see how your snake is doing in that moment. If things escalate, so if you notice some heavy breathing and then it escalates to your snake snapping into a ball really quick, you'll know that whatever you did escalated that snake from a little bit of stress to I'm fearing for my life stress. Here's another one that I think I talked about recently in a video, and that's what I call statuing. That's when the snake becomes a statue. That is a little bit higher stress, but what's happening there is, like, maybe you put them in a new area that they're not familiar with, or something has just happened, maybe a quick movement has just happened that's kind of freaked them out. They're totally still. And the reason they're not tongue flicking right now is that tongue flicking could give their position away to a predator. They don't want to do any movements just in case whatever they're scared of right now is a predator. Here's another couple of behavior things while you're handling your snake. So old Ben here is very relaxed right now. I don't feel any of his muscles tightening on me. He's super relaxed and is always okay with being handled. Since he crawled out of an egg a few months ago, he's been okay with being handled. But some snakes, when you're handling them, they'll tense up on you. And a lot of times people look at that as them just gripping you like a tree. And sometimes they are. But also, if you clearly have them, they're going to feel secure enough to just cruise around. Like, I clearly have him on, if he was on 1 or 2 fingers, he might grip me to hang on, but he doesn't need to do that. So in a case where they don't need to do that, you have them pretty securely, and they're still tightening around you, like they're still gripping, that's a snake that's a little bit stressed. They're not feeling comfortable about the situation. This is actually the end of the video. I've finished the video, but I just remembered that there's something about squeezing that your snakes will do, and Freya around my neck right now reminds me of this. It's that sometimes when your snake is wrapped around your arm or your neck or whatever, they start squeezing you. That doesn't mean that they're stressed necessarily. It often means that they're trying to move forward and they're stuck on your skin. If they're on your, if they're on a sleeve like this, they're not going to get stuck. But if they're on your bare arm, they'll get stuck on your skin. And they're just going to tighten more and more and more, trying to push themselves forward. They don't know that they have to loosen themselves and then move. So if you just help them, if you loosen them, unwrap them a little bit, you'll see that they're just going to move forward because that's what they're trying to do. Okay, here's a couple of things that snakes might do while in their enclosure. One thing is what we call glass surfing. This is when the snake goes up the side of the glass or in a PVC enclosure, just on the PVC, and they're kind of cruising around like this. If they're doing that all the time, that could mean stress. If it's a new snake and they're in their first week or 2 of being in an enclosure, you'll probably see them do that quite a bit. But if they don't settle down, then you might be concerned that that's stress. But that's also something that they will commonly do if they're just out and about. So let's say you have a snake that's settled and they sleep most of the day, and in the evening or late at night they come out, they do a little bit of that glass surfing. That doesn't mean that they're stressed. If they're doing it all the time, constantly, that could be a sign of stress, or probably is a sign of stress if it's constant. But a little bit of that is just something snakes do, so it's not too much to be worried about. Another thing that snakes will often do while in their enclosure or outside of it is bucking or bumping, doing this with their coils, or pushing against you with their coils. So snakes are not social creatures. So in the wild, if a snake is touched, that means that they're probably being attacked. So they're just not comfortable with being touched. In captivity, since they probably have never been attacked before in captivity, they're probably not fearing for their life, but it's annoying to them. Always being touched is annoying. So a lot of snakes will push against you. Some will try to bump you away, like get out of here. And some will just push you. We know that they're not fearing for their life at that point because they're not trying to run necessarily. Like I have some, especially the bigger adults, that will stay coiled up, and if I touch them on their side, they'll push or they'll bump, like get away from me. Some people misinterpret this behavior because a lot of times instead of a bump or a buck, it's just a push against you. When a mammal does that, especially a cat, that means, pet me more, give me more scratches. That's not what it means for a snake. These are completely different animals. This is just a snake pushing you away. So I hear a lot from people that say, my snake loves to get scratched and touched because they always push. They always push against it when I do that. When you can run your hand down their body and every part of their body will push against you as you do that. It's kind of cool, but it is them saying, please don't do that. If you look at my instinct versus learned behavior video that came out I bet it's 2 weeks ago from the time that this comes out, or maybe it's 3 weeks ago. If you look at that video, remember that snakes have instinct that they've built up for 128 million years. And you're not going to teach them to be social creatures by petting them occasionally, and then all of a sudden they enjoy being pet. This is one of those instincts, the fact that they're not social creatures, They don't like to be touched because it's just not something that happens in the wild in a nice way. So you're not gonna, did he just yawn? Did you just yawn, buddy? So you're not gonna teach them to be a social creature in their lifetime. And I know there's gonna be people out there that are gonna be like, my pet snake is different. He loves to be pet. And you can put that in the comment section if you like. And I'll hit the like button and I'll say something like, that's fantastic. Will I say that? I'm not gonna argue. So, you know, thumbs up. Here, we're not done with that. Let me tell you about the inspector really fast. The inspector was exploring the new snake condo that I've been showing in videos. That's just a bunch of black box hides all stacked up. I love that thing. It's so cool. I had the inspector going in there and he didn't want to be held, which he never wants to be held. So I put him on the counter and he starts going into a hide, but I had my hand on him. So he starts going in and he's got like half his body through the hide. I've got my hand like mid-body on him and he backs up to get the, I guess, second third of his body out so that he could just go bam and bump me as hard as he possibly could. And the whole thing shook, like it made the hide jump. Everything jumped. He was like, get out of here. So I left him alone. This is what I did. He gets really mad at me. And this is just kind of in breeding season. We talk about this a lot on this channel. He gets really mad at me, but that snake has never struck. He's never bitten. So, but he does do stuff like, get out of here. He's really tough. I'm back to Freya. She started to come out from behind the mirror, so I thought that I'd grab her again. Let me give you a great example of a different species of snake where the same behavior means something totally different. So with Maya, my black-headed python, if she's out and about and she's not in food mode, if I touch her body, sorry babe, did I startle you there? If I touch her body, she doesn't react, just like Freya doesn't really react to that. But when Maya's in her enclosure in food mode and I touch her body, she's gonna push really hard against it. That's not her telling me to get away. That's her thinking that my finger or my hand is food and she's trying to pin me against her enclosure. When that happens, I have about 4 seconds to get my hand away because she's gonna whip around with an open mouth and just grab at whatever she thinks is there. Let's talk about where the tongue comes into play with body language. Snakes learn all about their environment with their tongue. It's a better sense organ than their sight or their smell. We always say that they smell with their tongue, but they can actually smell too. Their tongue picking up scent particles and bringing it to the Jacobson's organ in a hole in the roof of their mouth, basically, that's attached directly to their brain, is a sense that we don't have anything for, so we just say that it's smelling with their tongue. But it's very strong, and it's how they figure out what's going on in the world. It's not the same as a dog wagging their tail. One time I got a comment a long time ago of somebody trying to tell me that their snake loved to come out and hang out with them because every time he approached the snake would start wagging its tongue. But what's happening there is when you approach your snake, you know, we figure out what's going on in our world mainly by our visual cues, right? So imagine that it's somebody who's all of a sudden dropped into a new space and they're like, what is happening? They're looking all over, right? That tongue wagging is looking all over to figure out what's going on. Is it the person that I'm familiar with that I know that person's scent? Whether they think you're a person or a warm tree, it doesn't matter. If they know your scent, they'll pick up on that eventually and they'll go, oh, okay, this is a safe thing that's approaching me. I know what this is. But they need a moment to figure that out. So that's what they're doing with their tongue. When they do long tongue movements, just like Freya just did right there, that kind of stuff, this is a snake that feels safe. She's just checking out her environment. She has no problem having her tongue go blah, 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 like that, because she doesn't think that she's going to be attacked by a predator. A snake that does very short tongue movements, they bring just the two little tips of their tongue out and they go blip, blip, blip. It's two things, I think. When a snake seems very interested in something, they'll stop and they'll analyze just that one thing for a little bit. They'll blip, blip, blip on just that one thing. But then also, if they all of a sudden are scared and they're trying to figure out what's going on, this is maybe a step beyond statuing or a step coming out of statuing, they might start to really quickly flick that tongue just a little bit to figure out what's going on. So you want to see long, smooth tongue flicks from your snakes to know whether they are feeling comfortable or not. These are great tongue flicks from Freya. How do you know if your snake is hungry? First of all, don't even worry about that. That sentence is a little bit faulty. And the reason is that there's a big difference in a hungry mammal versus a reptile that's in food mode. a snake that's in food mode. Snakes don't need to eat very often. And also, we know that like a python can go, why is my coffee maker making all that noise? This is crazy behavior from a coffee maker. What was I even talking about? What are we talking about? Let's go to my notes. Oh, we were talking about food mode. Snakes are hardwired to look for food opportunities. And in the wild, they don't come along very often, and they don't know when their next meal is going to come. So they might have a meal, and then within a day or two, as soon as they have digested enough to be able to move again, they can start looking for food again. And your pet snake might do that as well. So some of the signs of that are that, number one, if you have the scent of food in the room, so you have multiple snakes and you're feeding different snakes that day, your snake might come out and sit in a strike position waiting for some food to run by or to be offered it on tongs or whatever. So that strike position is potentially waiting for food because these are ambush hunters. They're not going to necessarily cruise around hunting. They will a little bit, but mainly they're going to sit in a position and wait for food to run by. So there's that. But then there's also coming out a little bit early. And a lot of people think, oh, that's a hungry snake, I should feed them. No, you shouldn't. You should keep your snake on a regular schedule. But that kind of behavior, I guess that's body language, that kind of behavior is telling you that they are doing what snakes do, which is look for food. And they can do that for days before it's their feeding day. Sometimes, especially for new keepers, it's really tough to wrap your head around not feeding a snake that seems hungry, because you would never let a dog or a cat go without food if they were hungry. But this is a totally different situation, and it's actually a different video. In fact, it's this video right here. So if you have more feeding questions, there you go. I have a few videos on feeding, but this one will get you started. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.